Hello, hello, hello. It's Julie Creffield from the Fat Girl's Guide to Running, and I am here today to share with you my top 10 tips for coping with illness and injury. Now, I'm going to give people a few minutes to get on the call. If you are here, I'd love to know where you're from. So in the comments, just type in where in the world you are, and let's see if we can get a bit of a buzz going. So I can see we have a few people watching us. This is, for those of you who wonder kind of, you know, who I am and where I am and all of that kind of stuff, this is the corner of my front room where I run the whole Too Fat to Run movement. This is it. Nothing too glamorous. It is just me in the corner of my front room at my desk. So, a little bit about me as people are joining. My name is Julie Creffield and I am a plus size marathon runner. I've run 3 marathons. I'm currently training for my 4th marathon, and I've done lots of other races, lots of half marathons. I've done a ultra marathon, triathlons, Tough Mudders, you name it, I've done it. So I've been running probably for the last 15 years or so. And actually I've done most of that, touch wood, injury free. But there have been a few moments, and obviously I coach lots of women all over the world, and many of those are injured or get illnesses. So I thought this would be a really helpful video to give you some pointers for kind of you know, for coping and finding ways around to keep yourself motivated while you are either injured or ill. So, but we have 5 women on the call, which is so exciting. Hi, Karen. So let me know, have you suffered with injury in the past? Give me a like or a love if you have. And have you been injured? Have you struggled with injury? Injury and illness, it's the things that kind of prevent us from reaching our goals sometimes when it comes to our running. You know, a badly placed flu epidemic or a chest infection or a twisted ankle can really kind of put a spanner in the works when it comes to meeting your running objectives. So what I'm going to do in the next, say, 20 minutes is run through my top 10 tips. So I'm going to get started because it seems like there are a number of you on the call. Hi, Heather. Good to see you. And I have a bit of a caveat, because this is the reason that I'm doing this call, is that I am just kind of coming to the end of a chest infection, and I can feel it in my chest. I can feel it every time I kind of raise my voice. So there might be a little bit of coughing, which actually takes me nicely on to my number 1 tip, which is really that prevention is better than cure, okay? Now, as I said, I'm normally injury-free. You know, I've had a few little dalliances, but, you know, I don't have any persistent injuries. But actually, in the last 10 days, my training has kind of lost its wheels, really. I've come off the tracks because I wasn't on top of my kind of preventative measures, and I've managed to get an illness and an injury all in one go. So the injury occurred 10 days ago, went for a 5-mile run. There was nothing wrong with the run. I enjoyed it. But towards the end, I could feel a twinge in one of the arches, the bit under your kind of foot. And I thought to myself, oh, I really need to buy myself some new trainers. But what did I do? I went running a couple of days later in the same trainers, and the injury got worse. And by the time I bought my nice new pair of trainers, it was a bit too late, really, and the injury had set in. And then the second thing was chest infection. Did a park run on Saturday, and then was doing some filming with the BBC, and we were out all day, you know, from 8 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't have a warm enough jacket. I didn't have a hot drink. I didn't take any lunch. So I really wasn't kind of taking care of myself as an athlete. And this is how we must treat ourselves as athletes. If we're training for these big races, these 10Ks, half marathons, full marathons, we must look after our bodies. So before we get to the point of injury and illness, what can we do to keep our health and our strength as high as possible? So things like drinking lots of water, eating well, taking supplements, staying out of the cold, staying away from ill people, getting those kind of I always forget this one, getting the squeezy stuff that keep on your hands, especially if you've got kids. This is a good one. And just generally looking after yourself. So number 1 is prevention is better than cure. But what do you do if you have an injury? You know, because injury or illness, they do come upon both of us. Number 2 is don't panic and stay positive. Quite often you'll get an injury or an illness and you're like, right, that's it, I've had enough. I quit, you know, especially if you've got a big race and you're under a lot of pressure and you're a little bit scared about it anyway. You might be a bit like, oh, it's a sign, you know, I was never going to be able to do it anyway. Don't get into that negative mindset. Be positive. Try and tell yourself that there's a lesson in here somewhere. There's a reason why I've got this injury, particularly if it's early on, because you can learn a lot from it. So that's number 2, is to try and stay positive, even if you've got a really bad injury or a really bad illness, because you don't know. You don't know yet how bad it's going to be. Which leads me nicely on to number 3, is seek professional help as soon as possible. Don't wait for it to get really, really bad before you go out for help. Get into the habit of, as I said, looking after your body, looking out for those niggles. Get your treatment as soon as possible, because often by seeing a professional, you can nip it in the bud really quickly and it never has to become something big. So when I talk about professionals, what am I talking about? Firstly, if you're in the UK, then you'll have a GP, which means you have a free service to go and see your GP. Sometimes it's hard to get an appointment really quickly, so bear that in mind. And it depends whether you have a sympathetic doctor or not. Some doctors are not really into running. Some doctors might kind of wag their finger at you about weight loss. But if you have a good relationship with your doctor, there's no reason not to go and see your doctor straight away to get his diagnosis, his or her diagnosis. But it could be on the NHS that you're waiting a long time to see a physio or a podiatrist or something like that. So bite the bullet and do it privately. It doesn't have to cost an awful lot, and that money is an investment in you as an athlete. So who am I talking about here? Physios, osteopaths, chiropractors, podiatrists, sports masseurs. These people are going to be your friend. These people are going to help get you back into some form, you know, of strength and health, so that you can get back out there and run. I've always paid something like £40 for an hour-long session for most of those people, and it's the best £40 I've ever spent. Often, even with what I feel is quite a bad injury, within a week and one treatment, I'm back training again. And you can find, I know, I've also got osteopath treatment for free at a local osteopath training college. So there are always alternatives, but act fast. Get the professional help as soon as you can, even if it's just for the diagnosis, because then you know what you're dealing with. Number 4 is get clear on what the implications are for this for this injury or illness. You know, if your race is months and months in the future, it gives you a lot more flexibility to tweak things, to change things. If it's just around the corner, then you need to be honest. You need to have an honest conversation with yourself about what is possible. In 2015, I managed to fall down a flight of stairs on a bus backwards and knocked myself out and really injured my back and my neck 2 weeks before running the London Marathon. At first, I thought, right, everything's out of the window. This is not going to happen. I'm going to have to pull out. And then I went to see a osteopath, and I had daily treatments and got my back strapped up and all of those things. And I was able to do the race, but I had to change my goal. So my original goal was to try and get as close to my PB as possible. That goal went completely out the window, and I refocused, and it was all about completing the race, which I did. So number 4 is about getting clear on what the implications of your injury or your illness are on your training plan and your eventual goal. So have a little bit of a conversation about what this now means. Number 5 is to focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. So when you're out and you can't run, you know, and you're laid up either recovering from an illness or treating an injury, you're a bit like, God, I should be running tonight. Oh, you know, you look at your training plan, you're like, oh, this is not going to happen now. And you can get really kind of deflated. But there are always things you can do. You know, if a doctor or a professional is giving you exercises to do the bloody exercises, you know, take the supplements, you know, nutrition is a really kind of a good example of this. You know, often when you're training, I find it really hard to lose weight while marathon training, because you're hungry all the time and you're busier, and I just find it really difficult, because you don't want to be having less calories than you need, because your body needs to kind of recover and stuff like that. But if you say have a 2-week period where you know you're not training, why not focus really specifically on your nutrition. And you could there's two kind of schools of thoughts here. You could go purely on what are the foods that are going to help me recover quicker. So what are the foods that have got loads of kind of anti-inflammatories in? What are the foods that have lots of antioxidants in? I get my words wrong. How can you pump your body full of the good stuff that is going to give you the best chance of recovering? The other thing is, how can you drop some weight? If you've got an injury that is around your ankles or your knees or your hips, even 4 or 5 pounds worth of weight loss is going to help aid that recovery. But sometimes that's a difficult thing to admit to yourself. I know for me, with what's going on with my feet at the moment, I know if I lost half a stone, it would really help the recovery of that. So it's one of the things that I'm focusing on over the next few weeks. Number 6, I wish I'd numbered this on my list. Number 6 is cross train. Okay, so you might not be able to run. What else can you do? And ask your professional about this. Can you walk? Can you swim? Can you cycle? Can you do weights? I've been doing yoga every day this week because I know I can't get out and run. But the yoga in itself is helping me to stretch out my hamstrings, and my hamstrings is where a lot of my tightness is. And possibly because the hamstrings are connected to everything else, it might even be part of the reason that I've got this problem with my arches. So there is always something that you can do. Focus on building strength and keeping your fitness up. But as I said, ask your professional, what kind of fitness stuff is going to be okay to help with your recovery. Now, this one's a bit of a weird one, and you might look at me and go, oh, you weirdo. But this is about alternative methods, and I'm going to tell you 2 stories here. So a couple of years ago, I had a bit of a twinge in my knee. It was nothing major, but it was just kind of playing on my mind that I've got this sore knee. It was my left knee. And I just so happened to be at a business event where there were lots of stalls, and there was a lady across the way from me, and she was doing Reiki. Now, I've never really understand what Reiki is, but I went over and started chatting to her, and she said, would you like a free session? And now I didn't tell her that I had anything wrong with me. She just explained it's all about energy and realignment. And anyway, so I said, yeah, I'll have a free session. So I sat down, closed my eyes, and for about 15 minutes, I could just feel her moving around me. I didn't know what she was doing. And then all of a sudden, I felt a heat over my left knee. And I could sense that's where she was. I could feel my left knee burning. It was hot. And anyway, after 15 minutes, she said to me, how was that? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Really interesting, really weird, really spooky. She said, have you got something going on with your left knee? She said, I felt something odd happening there. And I said, yeah. I said, I've got an injury there. Anyway, the following day, woke up, my knee was fine. There was nothing wrong with my knee. It had healed. Spooky, weird, don't understand how it worked, but it did. Second story. And it's about this little thing. Now, this is a bit of rose quartz. Now, I am not into crystals. I'm like, this is a new thing for me. Only over the last few months that I've started to kind of explore this. A friend of mine sent me this, and apparently it has healing qualities. So on Monday this week, I'd just done this thing at Park Run. I woke up, I could feel my chest was sore. I wasn't coughing, but I had real kind of pain in my chest, and my breathing was quite tight. So I posted in one of the business groups that I'm in. I said, oh my God, I can't believe it. I've got such a busy week and I feel like I've got a chest infection come in. And somebody said to me, chest infection is all about kind of stress and grief. And I've had some bad news this week. She said, why don't you try a bit of rose quartz? It might help with the healing. So I'll tell you what I did. On Tuesday night, I popped this in my sports bra and I slept in my sports bra, got up the next day, and it's not completely gone, but I feel like it hasn't grown into the chest infection that it could have been. So alternative methods, don't dismiss them. Even if it's just a placebo effect, I don't care. If it's going to get me better faster, I'm all for it. So yeah, alternative methods. So number 7, inspiration. Now, we come into this sport by very different methods. Maybe it was for weight loss, maybe it's because we wanted a challenge, but we, on the whole, we love the sport. And then when we can't run, it's really, really difficult to stay motivated. So this is when you really should be looking for inspiration. It's a perfect time when you're laid up to read. There are so many good books out there, not just my own ones, but books that you can read about other runners, other athletes that have overcome huge kind of health issues and life problems, and how running has been their savior. So get inspired. think about kind of your goals for the future. Perhaps do a vision board. You can't see it here, but I've got a lovely vision board just next to my desk that's all about my goals for this year. So spend some time thinking about why running is so important to you and why you want to get back to health as soon as possible so that you can enjoy the sport once again. We're nearly there, ladies. Number 9 is to support others. Now, I run an online running club called The Clubhouse. There's about 400 women in there. Now, we know injury can happen to anyone. Injury and illness can happen to anyone. It's not just overweight women that get kind of twisted ankles and sore knees and sore feet, although sometimes we feel like that. Athletes of all abilities, of all shapes and sizes, beginners and experts get injured, okay? But even during injury, we must stay connected to the sport. You know, the sport is very much about community. Running is, you know, we think it's a solo thing, but actually it's not. Once you're a runner, you join this kind of worldwide community. And there are lots of ways when you're injured to feed back, to give back. So could you volunteer at your local park run? Could you volunteer at a local race? Could you be active on online groups giving support and advice? You know, what can you do to stay connected even if you can't actually get out and run? And then finally, and this is the most important tip, it's the one that is the hardest pill to swallow. I'm dead serious about this. Number 10 is knowing when to call it a day. Some injuries you cannot come back from. That sounds really dramatic. Like, you cannot come back from it quick enough to do the race that you want to do. Some illnesses are the same. A race is just a race. You might have so much stuff tied into it. It might be about a lifetime goal. It might be about money that you've raised. You might feel like you're letting people down. But ultimately, your health, your physical health and your mental health are so much more important than any race. And I kind of learned that this last year, actually. I've never pulled out of a race. I've always managed to do it one way or another. And I had the Beachy Head marathon coming out. It was a race that I'd wanted to do for ages, had a place on it, and my training was going well. I did 3 half marathons in September. You know, I was running strong. And then it got to kind of the week before the marathon, and I just knew I wouldn't be able to do it. I was exhausted. The logistics became too much. I had niggles in my knees, and I just knew the sensible thing to do was to pull out, and that is what I did. When you pull out from a race, you are not quitting. You are being a strong athlete. That's what you're being. You're being a sensible, proper athlete. And we need to kind of get away from this idea that not doing a race is quitting. It so isn't. So there it is, lady. They are my 10 top ways to cope with injury and illness. I've actually written all of this down in a blog post, which I'm going to put live on the blog as soon as I come off this call. I'm going to have a quick look at the comments here. It's so good that so many of you joined me live. That was brilliant. Jenny Wood, easier said than done, though. Yeah, I'm not sure which you meant, but a lot of these are easier said than done. Jo says, I love a good book. She has all of mine, which is brilliant. These are some of my books in the background here. Scream If You Want to Run Faster and The Fat Girl's Guide to Marathon Running. I love a good running book as well, especially if it's about somebody that kind of I know. Linda says she's recovering from a flu-type virus with chest infections. So any training that is out for questions, she had no energy. Yeah, it's really, really difficult. Nutrition is the way to get that energy back. I've been forcing green smoothies down. That's what I've been having every day this week, which meant I had to go and shop for the ingredients. But I think it's about keeping yourself busy and motivated, so that you know that you're doing everything you can within your capabilities to get you back on track. But it's really hard, particularly if you have recurring bouts of flu or chest infections. And I think that's when you need to really think, right, do I need to go and work out what the cause of this is, and what can I do from a preventative point of view? So do you need to up your vitamin intake? Do you need to take something like echinacea? Is it about the fact that you keep picking up the bugs that your kids have? So what can you do preventatively wise? Gosh, that made no sense at all. Can you recommend a good book that you like, Julie? Yeah, there's a great book. I loved Chrissy Wellington's book, which is more about triathlons and Ironmans, but I loved that. I think I listened to that on an audio. What other books? There's another one. Actually, I'll tell you what, I'll put a link. I've got a list of books that I like, so I'll put a link into the book, into the thing. It's funny, when I'm writing my own books, I stop reading other people's, because otherwise it becomes all a bit weird. But obviously my The Fat Girl's Guide to Marathon Running, which is my latest book, everybody tells me they love that book. It's full of stories, but also loads of practical tips. A lot of these tips are in there too. And let's have a look at some other ones. Linda says she's up to the leafy greens and the veg. Leafy greens and veg, it's the way to go. But also water, making sure that you drink. I have a bottle of this on my desk. I've not done very well today, actually. A bottle of this on my desk every day. Try and finish the whole bottle before the day is done. Let's have a look. Heather says it's hard to think of myself as an athlete. Yeah, it is hard. In the early days, I struggled with this too. Do you know what I would suggest doing? And I'm a massive fan of doing this. Get yourself some Post-it notes and write, I am an athlete, and put it somewhere close to you. So I have little stickers on my desk, on my pin board, things that I need to remind myself that are difficult to, you know, and you have to kind of, even if you're just saying it to yourself, even if you're writing it in your journal, yes, it's a bit hard to say it out loud to people, but, you know, surrounding yourself with other athletes, you know, which brings me nicely on to how I'm going to finish this, because we're 20 minutes in. And I want to talk to you briefly about the Clubhouse, which is our online running club, which is full of athletes. It's full of wonderful plus size and some not plus size athletes. We have women who are just starting out. We have women that are walkers, power walkers. We have women training for their first 5K, women going from 5K to 10K, women training for their first half marathons, their first marathons, and we have supersonic women that are running marathons every weekend and training for ultra marathons. It is a real mixed bunch. But what I love about the Clubhouse is there's absolutely no judgment, and I love the fact that women share their knowledge, their challenges, their wins. It's a beautiful, beautiful online space that I'm very, very proud of. And we have brought the price down. We've brought the price down to just £5 a month. And you get so many resources, downloadable plans, you get guest experts. We have a fueling page. We're starting to do kind of regional meetups. We've got a meetup this Saturday in Edinburgh, I think. But we're going to be training up coaches, Two Fat to Run coaches, to deploy across the UK. So it's a really, really exciting time to get involved with what I'm doing with Two Fat to Run. So I hope that has been helpful. Do continue. If you're watching this on a catch-up, feel free to post your questions in here. I'll put the links to my books, to my book list, and also to the Clubhouse. It's been real fun doing this. Thank you to everybody who's joined live. And yeah, remember, as I said, injury and illness happens to all kinds of athletes. It's not just us larger ladies. Be proactive, don't get too down in the dumps, and start to believe that you have the power to get back on track as soon as possible. Right, have a great weekend. Speak to you soon. Bye.